You're now listening to Sound Talent Media. Check out more shows at soundtalentmedia.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? I'm Matt McGackie, the vocalist of Cryptopsy and the host of the Vox and Hops Metal Podcast, where I sit down with fellow metal musicians. We talk all about their lives and music while sharing killer craft beers. If you've ever wanted to sneak backstage and share a beer with one of your favorite musicians, well, Vox and Hops is the podcast for you. This week on the podcast, I dropped a killer episode with Kelly Schaefer of Atheist. There is this episode and over 440 other ones to help you enjoy life, metal, and craft beer. So what are you waiting for? It's time to become a Vox and Hops head. Cheers!
Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of the show. I'm super glad to have you here. If this is your first time tuning in, thanks so much for clicking on this and downloading and all that good stuff, all that normal podcast nerd stuff that podcast hosts say. But seriously, couldn't do without you. So thank you for listening to this right now. Today's episode is with Mr. Tom Cram. Tom Cram, as some of the deeper gear nerd people might know, was a employee and actually the head dude of DOD and Digitech for what I would consider to be some of their prime years. And if you've paid any attention to what that company did in the last few years, you know exactly what I'm talking about. He is now the man behind Spiral Effects, and we get into that whole transition and why that happened. Spiral Effects is doing some really, really cool stuff. I have their Black Fuzz. It's really wonderful. Really, really enjoy it. But before we get into the episode, I just want to remind everybody that there are many easy ways to support the show. You can go to tonemob.com/reverb for any of your gear purchasing needs. So if you're going to buy something off Reverb, if you're going to sell something on Reverb, if you're going to do anything on Reverb, go to tonemob.com/reverb, and a little bit of that will come back and help keep the show afloat and help keep the winds in the sail of this weird pedal-powered pirate ship that we have going on. So yeah, tonemob.com/reverb is the place for that. And reviews on iTunes is always great, but please, most of all, share this with a friend. If you really enjoy this show, if this gives you any kind of anything at all, sharing with a friend is about the best thing you can do. Really is. The more people that listen, the better it is. The word gets spread out, and we grow like a crazy monster. But honestly, It means so much to me that you're listening right now. And if you want more nerdery, and you happen to be on that big monster that is Facebook, that so many of us are on, you can go to The Tone Mob on Facebook. It's a group. We're a private group. We're just hanging out. We're talking about food. We're talking about gear. We're talking about basically anything that goes on this podcast. It's in that group, and it's there for you. So just search The Tone Mob. But make sure you answer the questions. I've had a lot of people try to join lately that didn't answer the questions. And if you're not going to answer the 3 simple questions, and it doesn't even have to be that serious. You don't have to have like a in-depth answer to these things. Then it's hard for us to let anyone in because it seems like, well, you're not going to participate in the conversation anyway. So it's one of those deals where you need to answer the questions. It also helps us recognize that you're not a robot, because believe it or not, that is an issue that Facebook groups face. So, yes. Anyway, that's enough of the plug. I know we podcast hosts do this all the time, and it's very annoying, but I'm trying to do my best here. Trying to keep this thing afloat. Anyway, without further ado, here's Mr. Tom Cram. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Tone Mob Podcast, the show about guitar tone and the people behind it. I'm your host, Blake Weiland, and with me today, I have Tom Cram.
Hello.
From Spiral Effects. What's going on, man?
Not much, just recovering from NAMM. NAMM was pretty intense. 4 days? Yeah. 4 days of intensity.
It's such a weird experience. Like, it's, for anybody that hasn't been there, it's like, I think Josh from JHS put up a meme that explained it perfectly, at least for me. And it was the guy getting a drink out of his fountain cup and getting one or 2 different kinds of soda, and one was labeled love and one was labeled hate. And I think that sums it up just perfectly.
Yeah, I've been doing it since, let's see, I think I went to my first NAMM in 94. And that was not affiliated with anybody, just as a guitar player. And then I started working NAMM since '96. So I've been to quite a few, and it's hard every time. It is weird. You look forward to it and you hate it at the same time.
It's weird because you look forward to the people, most of the people anyway, but it's just like this overwhelming wash of like sensory overload. My dad is a guitar player, but he's not a people person. Like his idea of a vacation is going up into the mountains, which I also think that sounds wonderful, but
mine too. That's totally what I do.
But he at like Disneyland is like, oh, this is a bit much for him, at least as far as his enjoyment level goes. And he's always like, when are you gonna get me into NAMM? I'm like, Dad, you will hate it. You will hate it so much. It's so much more than Disneyland. Like it's impossible to describe. But
yeah, there's a weird thing that happens right around end of day 2, going into day 3. You've been assaulted by all the noise. You've been talking about your stuff, nonstop, and your brain disconnects. It's like an out of body experience, and you watch your mouth saying these words that you've practiced, and it's like beyond your control. And the weird part is people will try to connect with you and talk with you in a real fashion. And once you're on that autopilot, if somebody asks you like a real question, you're just like, that part of my brain is inaccessible at this point.
Right. Talk to me after the show in like a week when I've recovered.
Exactly right.
Well, let's get into your story because I'm actually very curious. I know some of it, but I don't know the nitty-gritty details. What I know you from is from obviously doing the Spiral stuff, and before that being with Digitech. But maybe you can start, when you started playing guitar, and how did you get into this crazy mess of an industry?
Let's see. So probably starts. Well, it definitely starts when I was 15 and still in high school. A buddy of mine got an electric guitar for his birthday and an amp, and he was a huge Beatles fan. And he asked me over to his house because he knew that I could sing. And it wasn't like from singing anything professionally; just he had heard me sing, and he started playing some Beatles songs, and we kind of sang along. And I didn't even know how to play an instrument at that point. I don't even know what that kind of stuff was, and I figured, I'd track down a guitar or something like that at some point, and, try to pick it up. But he suggested I play bass, and I didn't even know what a bass was. And I found out later it's the big guitar,
the long guitar,
the long guitar. But so I did odd jobs and mowed lawns and picked vegetables, that kind of thing, until I had enough money to buy my first bass guitar, and I bought a Hondo. One of those plywood basses. It was a P-bass copy. Really terrible, but at least it was something. And we practiced a bunch of songs, a bunch of rockabilly stuff, played, our high school dance. I think when I was a junior, that may have been when I was a senior, I can't remember. And I've been in bands ever since.
Ever since.
Yeah.
Okay. And then when did you get into the pedal stuff?
Let's see. So I got I think it was an MXR pedal really early on. It was one of those things where I was sold a pedal by a sales guy. We had a couple of really great shops around town at that time, and I went to a place called Wagstaff Music, and one of the guys that worked there said, "Oh, you play bass, you should try this." And it was a phaser, and I tried it, and it sounded kind of cool, but kind of weird. But that was my very, very first pedal. And from then I kind of just experimented. I got a TS9 early on that I didn't dig. I got a Big Muff that I thought was cool, but I ended up trading it for something else. I wish I had kept that one because that was a green, a Russian green muff. That would have been worth some dough now.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially on bass. I mean, those things sound great. But I didn't know at the time. I was just like, holy cow, this doesn't sound like a bass anymore, which is, kind of the point. But at the time, I didn't know any better. But, I've been collecting, fuzzes since then. So I've got a massive collection of fuzzes. But, I kind of veered off into the multi-effects route for quite a few years, too. And I was in a touring band called Honest Engine for quite a few years. And I used a rack system for that. just for convenience sake. But I always had fuzzes laying around. When we'd record, I'd play with fuzzes and that kind of stuff. But yeah, so when it shifts is when I went from just being a musician to being in the industry. Luckily enough, DOD and Digitech are local to Utah.
Oh, that's right. I forgot about that.
Yeah, so they started here. So DOD started here. The dates are fuzzy. It depends on who you talk to, but anywhere from 73 to 74, DOD started, and then Digitech was the digital offshoot of DOD. And that started sometime in the early 80s. I want to say 81 or something like that. But Johnny Lightfoot, who is a local bass player, he also played with Air Supply for a long time. He and I went down to the Digitech and DOD factory and applied when we were little. That would be like when we were 19, 20, something. I don't know. And we didn't get hired, but I kept trying, and later I got hired on to work on the line at Digitech in '96, and I worked on the line for almost 2 years. And then shifted over from the assembly line to working in marketing for DOD, just in time for the revamp. I had a hand in the revamp from the old FX series DOD stuff to the what I call the two-tone. That's when we switched to the new foot switch and the captive battery door, and the new two-tone graphics and stuff like that. So I was part of the team that facilitated that transition. But I shifted from DOD over to working in DBX tech support, and I worked there for 7 years teaching people how to use compressors and pro audio gear. And then I shifted from DBX tech support to working in a division called SDIG, which was the software division of Harman that helped program the software that runs all the big venue software programs and things like that. And I worked there till 2010, I think. And then I shifted from there to doing artist relations for Digitech and DOD. And then from there, shifted from artist relations to product development, and then running the company all the way up until 2018.
Yeah. So yeah, you became known as you've been around for a long time before most pedal nerds knew who you really were, but you were known as the force behind basically creating the last era of DOD stuff and Digitech stuff that was really truly epic. The Rubberneck is the one I point to.
Thanks, man.
I mean, the Rubberneck's amazing. Can you tell me the story of the Rubberneck? It doesn't get the love it deserves, in my opinion.
That was a labor of love for sure. I first designed it basically on a napkin. I drew it out on how I wanted the layout to be and what functions I wanted it to have. And the final design changed very, very little from that napkin drawing. I think we shifted a control or something like that. Nothing really major from that napkin design, but it took 5 years from that napkin design to final product. And it was a lot of wrestling and a lot of iteration. It's not necessarily the technical end of it, although there was a lot of that. Going and doing a analog bucket brigade delay at a company that's not used to doing that kind of stuff. When every engineer in the building knows they can do it faster, cheaper, and easier digitally.
Of course,
could be quite a battle. and it's funny when you work with engineers and they're like, this sounds terrible, and you have to say, but that's kind of part of the charm of that's how BBDs sound. So it was difficult, but worth it in the end. I think it turned out really cool.
It did. It turned out brilliantly. And as somebody who's working on something in that same kind of area right now, I can relate, because I've got why don't you just do it digital so many times? And it's but I want it to sound like that. That's the whole point. This is what we're striving for. You want it to sound broken? Kind of, yes. That is
kind of, yeah. It's part of the charm.
Uh-huh.
And that's as guitar players, I think that guitarists and bassists they want to have access to all of the colors in the palette. You want to be able to have clean, pristine repeats or clean, pristine cleans, but you also want to have grunged up, dirt, fuzz, and and messed up repeats. You want to be able to paint with all the colors. So it's it makes sense to me.
Yeah, you get it.
Engineers is a different thing.
Yeah, I've told this story before, and I don't know how true it is. But I remember reading on a forum years ago about a guy who was in an engineering class, and he brought in a design, like a schematic, or actually brought in the pedal of like a Death by Audio product. I don't remember which one it was, but the teacher was like, "This is idiotic. Like the transistors are backwards, and things like that." And he's like, "Yeah, but it sounds good." And this is the dumbest, like from an electronic standpoint, design ever. But it's like, there's an art to this as well. And what's electronically correct is not always what we're shooting for. That's not the point of it.
Well, I mean, when you look into the history of amplifier design, and guitar players being their usual Neanderthal selves and just cranking it up until it goes into distortion, that horrifies electrical engineers, driving a tube amp into distortion, nonlinear. But that's rock and roll, man.
That's the sound. That's what we want.
Yep.
So I don't know how much you can talk about it, but I'm going to be in bad trouble with my wonderful nerdy audience if we don't dig into what on earth is going on with Digitech right now, because there was rumored that they were going away after you guys left, but they're still kind of around. Like they had a booth at the 2018 or 20, I can't remember which. Yeah, the NAMM right after you guys were gone, they had a booth. And we're like, what? Are they going out of business? Is Harman shutting them down? What can you tell us?
So there's some stuff I can't talk about, and there's some stuff I can. So I'll try to walk that line. And some stuff is speculation because once the entire team got dissolved, we basically broke contact with anybody that any friends that we had there, because they're all under NDA.
Of course,
so they can't talk to us and that kind of stuff. So anyway, the when Samsung came in and bought Harman, they bought Harman for their automotive, enterprise, and consumer divisions. Mm-hmm. And DOD and Digitech. Well, let me back up there. So any of the MI brands were of little concern to them. And when it comes to the hierarchy of Harman brands, the MI divisions are a small portion of it. And even smaller are Digitech, and even smaller than that is DOD. So when it comes to the grand scheme of things and what Samsung is looking for, Digitech and DOD are not even on the list.
Right.
They could care less. So I don't know the rationale behind it or the machinations that happened to cause them to decide to shutter Digitech and DOD and some of the other MI brands. And I probably shouldn't say shutter. Well, you know what? They closed the entire division out here. So the South Jordan office was shut down. So I'm going to say shutter. They got rid of all of the engineers. They got rid of all of the support staff. They got rid of my team. So there's not really any team there now that I know of.
Right.
And so to answer the question as to what they're doing, the NAMM that you're talking about, where there was a booth, the way Digitech and DoD works, they have a distributor, and the U.S. distributor still carries Digitech and DoD product, and the booth was in that distributor's booth. So it wasn't a dedicated Digitech and DoD booth at all. It was the distributor's booth showing the products that they're still selling. And I would imagine that without any staff, all they have to do is just keep making the product that they can make as long as there's demand there. And so as long as people keep buying whammies, they'll probably keep making whammies for as long as they can. But without any dev, without any engineers assigned to it, I think we'll see a lot of other NAMMs, just like we saw for this one in 2020, where there's nothing.
Right. No new product. Just the same stuff that was in the 2018 product line, basically.
Correct. And the DOD stuff is even, in more dire straits because it was such a even smaller part of it that, I just don't see how they're going to manufacture that stuff at all. Maybe the rubberneck, because I know the rubberneck still sells. But the other stuff, all the product that I've been seeing that they've been selling is all stuff that was made while I was there. So I don't think that they're making any new DOD stuff at all. But you have to remember that, like I said before, this is speculation since I have no contact there. I'm seeing the same stuff that you guys see in the market now. I have no inside information.
Right. It's really sad. It's also weird. Like it puts in perspective how small the MI industry is in the grand scheme of things. We talked about how overwhelming and huge NAM is, and that's true. That is very true, but it would pale in comparison if there was a similar convention for cell phone manufacturers.
Oh yeah, I mean, compare CES, for example. Compare CES to NAM, and there is no comparison. CES is like NAM times 100.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah, the greater electronics industry is massive, and one of my old corporate superiors described it as, dollar for dollar, the MI. I mean, the total MI industry that includes Fender, Gibson, Marshall, et cetera, et cetera. The total MI industry is about the same size as the button industry. And so when you think about it that way, it's like it's really not that big.
No,
which is cool too. I mean, that's the thing is, I'm not saying this stuff as a negative at all. Part of the cool thing about being in the MI industry and being part of DOD and Digitech is that you get to know all these people. You get to know all these different brands, and the feel is actually really cool. I don't imagine that if you go to a button industry convention, if such a thing exists, that you have the camaraderie, that you have with the MI industry. But it's comparable sizes.
I think the size of it and the nature of it lends to that camaraderie. It's if it were bigger somehow, I don't know how that's possible, but if it were a bigger industry, I think we wouldn't have JHS and Earthquaker putting on a shindig for all the pedal people to go hang out at. That wouldn't exist.
I completely agree. I mean, and not to mention the fact that the MI industry is run and staffed by a bunch of crazy musicians, from top to bottom.
Yes, it is,
and that's cool too. I mean, that's we're all used to doing the whole rock and roll late night thing, and we're all a little nuts. I think you have to be a little nuts to do this kind of stuff.
I think so. I think I've talked about it before, where it's very interesting that everyone gets along so well despite being competitors, like direct competitors, and everyone seems to love each other for the most part. And I think it's because it attracts a certain type of person. And
I agree. Yep.
It attracts people who are interested in people, and attracts people who like all of this stuff. There's not very many people in this industry that don't enjoy some aspect of it. They might not like all of it, but they like something about it, even if they complain most of the time. I know a couple people I'm thinking of in particular, but I'm always like, oh, wait, you like that part though? Oh, I guess I do. Yeah, I guess that part's pretty cool. Whatever it is, it's really funny. It's a very fun thing.
It's true. I mean, the thing is if you're into something like this for just the money, let's take an engineer, for example. An engineer can make 10 times the money that he can make, designing an app. He can make 10 times the money designing an app,
right,
for another company. And so, if you're in this for the money, you're going to go somewhere else. So people who are in the MI industry are not in it for the money. They're in it for something else.
They're in it for, I think, that camaraderie and that connection to the things that they grew up loving.
I agree completely.
The opportunities you get presented with that's what make it really unique. Today, as we're talking right now, in a few hours, I'm headed into Portland to go interview one of my favorite bands of all time. And that's weird. Like that wouldn't happen if I was, I don't know, some other sort of podcaster, but they're like, we want to nerd out on gear, you know? Usually it takes a bigger publication to get access to some of these people, but they're like, oh, you want to nerd out about pedals? Oh yeah, we want to talk to you. I'm like, all right, this will be fun. You know,
that's an interesting observation, because one of the things I've also found cool is that the tools that we use to make our art, it's universal. I mean, it's funny because music is like the universal language, but the tools that we use to make that music is also universal. And you can see the excitement in a rock star's eyes when he hears just the right fuzz for the first time, or I've seen Slash. I've seen Slash get all giddy over a pedal, and when you think about, here's this freaking rock star with millions of dollars, and he's geeking out over a $100 pedal. That's universal. I mean, the kid who's 15 and the rock star who's old and jaded getting nuts about the same flanger. That's awesome.
Yeah, that is where the magic happens. I mean, yeah, I hear the same thing. I hear like John Mayer. This is all rumor, of course, but I hear John Mayer just routinely just like calls up his Sweetwater guy and he's like, "Yeah, I want to try all of this stuff. Send me a package," and it's like he orders a bunch of gear. Like, gear nerdery is, I don't know if it ever goes away. I feel like it kind of maybe comes in waves, but I don't think it ever is completely absent, even after all this time.
I don't think so either. I mean, because you talk to acoustic players and they've got their, the stuff they nerd out about. Even when it was all racks all the time back in the late 80s and early 90s, that's still gear nerdery.
Oh yeah,
and there were tons of guitar players out there, like me, that were collecting pedals even while they were using racks and stuff like that. So I don't. Once you understand that these are colors on your palette that allow you to paint what you want, then you got to have all the paint.
Okay, yeah, we need all of the colors. We need that full spectrum, especially guys my age who grew up with Photoshop and we had literally all the colors. Now we're trying to have that in an audio sense, and it's a dangerous addiction because it's not as easy as just paying Adobe a couple dollars or whatever it is a month.
That is true. Yeah, it can bankrupt you.
It's almost embarrassing sometimes, but then at the same time, it's like, hey, I justify it by saying it's for work. It's fine. It's for work. It's okay. Don't worry.
Well, the way I justify it though is I've been saying since I started Spiral that there's a riff in every pedal.
Oh, that's a good one.
But that comes directly. There's an old saying that there's a song on every guitar, and so I really truly believe that. If you get, that's not just me justifying consumerism. It's for real. When you get a new pedal, it can make you play different. It can make you think different. I think that's part of it too. It's a give and take.
Oh, it can inspire things that I am a much different player than I was 5 years ago. And a lot of that is due to me getting some of like these synth pedals and some of these other things that have been produced recently. Some of the Maris stuff, some of the hologram stuff. And I'm like, it makes me play differently. It makes me create different things. And that's what's so amazing about all of it. But you brought up Spiral, which is good because I wanted to get into that. So can you tell the story of how that came to be?
Yeah. So the Summer NAMM 2018. So this is after we had been given our notice, everybody at DOD and Digitech, and Summer NAMM was coming around, and the first day of Summer NAMM was my last day at DOD Digitech, and I'm like, I've got to get a job. I got to go and shake some trees and figure out what I'm doing next. And honestly, the idea of doing a pedal company was, I don't want to say it was the furthest from my mind, but it was definitely not on my top 10. And I went to go to Summer NAMM thinking, okay, the best way to get some leads is to go where all the people are. And I went to the airport and they had given away my seat.
Oh, no.
And yeah, so I ran out to my car, threw all my crap in the back of the car, and I drove out to Summer NAMM all the way out to Nashville. It's a it's a 24-hour drive, and I drove straight through. So I arrived a little bit late, but just in time to go and talk to some of my contacts. I had some meetings set up, with a couple of the usual suspects, and I don't want to give a negative impression at all. That's not where I'm heading here. I talked to a lot of the people who I would love to work with, but as I talked to them, I realized that what they wanted me to do was what I had already done at DOD and Digitech. And for some reason, it did not interest me at all. I mean, it's weird because I went out there wanting to do what I had done again, but after thinking about it and talking with people, I realized that I couldn't do it. And it may be because I was still fresh from, like I said, the first day of NAMM was my last day on the job for DOD and Digitech. So it could be that I was having some, emotional issues when it comes to that. I don't know. It didn't feel like it, but who knows? But I just remember after the last day, getting ready to drive home and thinking, I just can't do this again. I don't have the will to work in a corporate environment again. I just don't want to do it. And so on the long drive home, I was thinking about it. And I had been modding pedals and stuff for most of my life, and I started thinking, what if I did my own thing? Do I have enough ideas for that? And I started thinking about it. I'm like, yeah, I do. Do I have a kind of a vision of where I want to go? And I thought about it some more, and I'm like, I do. And so I called my wife. I was like somewhere in Texas, and I'm like, hey, I think I want to start my own company. And she's like, oh crap. And she's like, no way. And so we talked about it, and I kind of laid out, my 5-year vague plan to her, and she kind of warmed up to the idea. And I said, think about it. I'll call you back when I get to Colorado. And so I actually got trapped in Colorado. It was during the wildfire season. Last year, but I got trapped in a little small town. They wouldn't let me out, so I had even more time to think about it. But I called her from Colorado, and I said, hey, I've been thinking about it a lot, and I think this is the right decision. What do you think? She's like, absolutely, let's do it. And so I started, dictating some ideas into my iPhone, so I wouldn't forget them. And when I got home, we wrote up a business plan, and I wrote out all the stuff I wanted to do and what I wanted to accomplish, what direction I wanted to head, and we shipped our first product that November, and it's been just a little over a year now.
What was the first pedal?
The Black Spiral.
The Black Spiral
Fuzz.
The one I have.
That's the one you have, yes.
Yes, I've been loving it. It's been a fun. I've heard them all through headphones at NAMM, but it's much different when you get it at home with your own stuff, and you can really open it up and let it rip. And that it's actually tamer than what I remember it being in a weird way. For some reason, I had this image in my head of it being more bitey and spitty, but I'm like, I can really control this thing, like with my pick and pack and all that stuff.
Oh yeah, so the Black is really responsive, and you're right. Part of that is probably because when you use a cab sim, into headphones, you're not getting the full picture. I mean, it's not like playing through your amp. But the range on the Black is pretty dramatic. It can go from overdrive all the way up to to spitty weird stuff. You can't quite get the whole picture with headphones.
No,
for sure.
Never. But I'm spoiled. I get to turn up as loud as I want. Nobody can tell me what to do. Neener.
And that reminds me. So the other cool thing about that led to this was I got to give props to the Nanolog guys, because they sent me some samples of the N2, and one of the things I realized again on that long drive was that I could incorporate their N2 in some of the designs I was thinking of, and offer something different and something unique. And so on the black spiral fuzz, the yellow
maybe
spiral
back
drive.
up just a second,
Okay.
because I don't think everyone knows what the Nanolog stuff is. I'm familiar, but not the listeners probably across the board.
I should probably explain that. So there's a company out of Canada called Nanolog, and it's a company that was formed after a university sponsored a research project into the properties of certain compounds and quantum tunneling. And I'm not going to pretend to know the particulars of it. And from what I understand, any transistor or diode or stuff has some aspect of quantum tunneling, but this was a device that was designed specifically for this purpose. And so it's interesting that some quantum technology found its way into the guitar world, but the guys who are part of it are guitar players, so there's that funny connection again. But so what ends up happening, again, not the technical version, is they apply different layers of this compound, and at a quantum level, it acts, it changes the signal, so it acts like a diode. And so, in fact, it is a direct replacement for diodes. So any place you'd use silicon or germanium or something, you can just pop in a Nanolog device. They have the N1, the N2, and the N3 now, and you can get a different flavor. And I had tested the N1 and N2 just after they had introduced them, and I thought they sounded fantastic. So I was super excited to use those. And so in the Brute, the black spiral, and the yellow spiral, I used the N2, but I used it mixed with germanium and silicon on a toggle switch. And I think it gives my stuff a little different flavor.
It does. It's an interesting. It's hard to explain what it sounds like in that circuit. To me, it's just like more saturated and just a bit more pleasant. I guess would be describing sound is the hardest thing ever. You always just come up with
especially when you get into the minutia too, because what when I guess for listeners, what we're describing is like not the final 10%, but like the final 1% difference. So when you flip the toggle between silicon and germanium, there's a volume drop, but there's also a pretty dramatic feel and texture change. But when you flip the toggle between silicon and the N2, there's a change, but it's really subtle. Mm-hmm. And so you start having to describe like these using really esoteric terms. And of course, Nanolog, if you go to their website, they've got all kinds of charts and stuff that show how the envelope is and what the onset looks like and things like that. So you can kind of get a visual idea, but nothing beats hearing it. The way I describe it is it has the openness and headroom feeling of an LED Schottky configuration, but it has the onset of germanium. And so you kind of get the feel of germanium without the volume loss. I think it sounds amazing, but of course I'm going to say that it's in my stuff.
Of course. So what are your plans for Spiral going forward? So far you focus mainly on dirt stuff. What are you thinking going forward, if you can peel back the curtain a little bit?
Well, so the whole idea with the first year. So first off, I'd like to pat myself on the back. I released 5 products in 1 year, and I think that's pretty cool. I probably ran a little bit too fast. I think a couple of pedals kind of got lost in the shuffle, just because I wasn't able to devote enough attention to getting the word out there about them. The Brute in particular, I think that's one of my best pedals. But so the idea was in the first year, I wanted to kind of what I've been calling build my foundation, which is kind of establish some core dirt tones and some clean tones with the boost and things like that, so that people kind of got a feel for where I was heading when it comes to sonics, look and feel, and just know that I'm not screwing around. And then the second year, which we're in now, I want to start moving into some modulations and things like that. But honestly, I'm not the greatest at electronics. I'm not an engineer. I'm completely self-taught. So a lot of this stuff I have to learn. So I've got some a steep hill to climb on some of this stuff, and I'm just barely starting to research some digital and what kind of DSP I want to use to move into some digital stuff. And I do want to work on some analog modulation. I have a couple of half-baked designs that I need to refine moving forward. But my goal is in 2020 to at least start dipping my toes into that thing. So that's kind of the near future. And as far as the far future is concerned, I'm in this for the long haul. I love building. I love playing. I'm hoping that this turns into a real long-term thing, but we'll see. The market will decide. I think if I make the right thing that sounds good, helps people create. Again, gives them that that riff I was saying. There's a riff in every pedal. If it gives them that that couple of riffs, I think I've done my job. So hopefully it'll be able to continue.
Oh, yes. It's a strange thing to really think about. Going back to the riff in every pedal, and this is weird. I'm not even that big of a John Mayer guy, but here I am referencing him again in this conversation. This is strange. I mean, I respect him, but it's not what I turn on a regular basis. But he was giving a talk, and he was talking about gear and pedals and stuff, and he was talking about a reverb pedal. I don't remember which one it was. I don't know if he actually said. And he said, like, yeah, I went through tons of reverb pedals trying to just get to the right one. And then he's like, and yeah, I spent a bunch of money on it. And some people say I wasted a bunch of money. And he's like, but then I got this one. And then he played this riff. And since I'm not like that big of a Mayer guy, I didn't really recognize it, but the crowd went wild. So apparently it was one of his biggest songs. And he's like, I created this riff because of this pedal. And you know what? It paid for all of those other pedals and then some. So, he's like, was it really a waste of money? Not really. And I'm like, I like this, John. I like this. You keep saying these things. This is good for me.
Yeah, it's that gets right back to what we were talking about earlier. It really is. It's you get a good amp, and all of a sudden songs come out. You get a good guitar, and all of a sudden songs come out. And you get a good pedal, and songs come out. It's a give and take. That creative process. So sometimes it just takes being able to hear something you've been playing in a different way. You play a triad, and arpeggiated triad or something like that clean, and then that's cool. You arpeggiate that same triad with a fuzz, with an octave fuzz, for example, and it turns into something way different.
Yes, way more powerful. That reminds me of another story I heard on this podcast, actually, and it's an urban legend. I don't know if it's actually true, but it's kind of amazing if it is that there was a guy working at a guitar store, and for a while, Tom Waits kept going into this guitar store, and he'd pick up this one acoustic guitar, and he'd kind of play it a little bit and look at it and listen to it, and then he'd put it back and he'd leave. And he did this like on a regular basis for a while, and then he finally went up to him. He didn't want to intrude because I'm sure Tom gets harassed on the streets all the time, but he finally went up to him. He was like, "Yeah, hey Tom, I see you've been looking at this guitar a lot. Do you think you might want to take it home, or do you want to try it out? Will you have any questions about it?" And he's like, "Nah, there's just no songs left in this one." And he just put it back and walked away. Like, whoa, that's so crazy. That's true for him. Somebody else might be able to squeeze some songs out of it, but for him, he couldn't see himself making any music with it. But he was curious about it. Talks about. I mean, that explains so much about how weird we are. Because we relate to that. I understand what he was doing. I get it. Like it's such a. I mean, if that's even true, who knows if that's even true? But it's a cool story.
No, it makes sense to me. I mean, there's. Oh well, the way I'd put it is, I have people drop by the shop every now and then. It's my shop is kind of a dump, so it's not something I encourage. But I have people drop by the shop, and so it's interesting to hear other people who play very, very differently from me play through my stuff. And I'm not just talking about my pedals; I'm talking about my guitars because I have my wall of guitars there too. And so I'll have, for example, my Yamaha SBG 1500. That is by no means a great guitar. It is trashed. I've fixed it up enough to where it plays okay and sounds okay and everything. But when I play it, it sounds so different from when somebody else plays it. But anyway, I had a guy come in and he wanted to try the boost. And so I hooked up the white to a Vox and that guitar, and I played a little bit, and it sounded fat and punchy and all the things I want it to be. And I give him the guitar and say, "Hey, give it a try." And he starts playing, and his touch was so light, and his the way he phrased was like 180 degrees different from how I phrase, and it sounded completely different. And fortunately, on the white, I have some controls that you can dial it in to have a little bit more low end and hit the clipping diodes a little bit harder and stuff. But I was able to tailor it so it sounded fat and punchy and cool with his playing. But the exact same settings, exact same guitar, exact same amp, different player, and it sounds completely different. And all those different factors mean that, of course, all different kinds of gear speaks to different people in different ways. It's a cool thing.
It's even amazing how the same piece of gear with a different player can sound different, but like equally awesome. That's what I find so strange. So I'm in love with the Benson amp stuff. People know that. I talk about it incessantly. I'm the biggest Benson shill ever. But I have a Benson Vincent, and I was at his shop a few months ago, actually probably more like 8-9 months ago, and this guitar player named Celise Henderson was in there, and she's incredible. But
I follow her on Instagram. She is incredible.
She's awesome. She was there checking out his stuff, and I was like, Chris was kind of busy, so I was being the salesman for him, and here's the Vincent, here's how it works, here's what's going on, and I kind of plugged it in and set it up with the same settings that I would use. And she started playing, and it was like, this is unreal. And she got done. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't sound like that when I play it. It sounds substantially different. I think it sounds good to me, but hearing what she could do with it was unreal. She did end up getting one. So I guess I did an okay job.
I haven't tried a Benson.
Well, let me tell you, they're pretty awesome. The Vincent, I mean, I am so biased. I can't help but be biased because the Vinny and the Vincent, the Vinny's is little one water, and then the Vincent's not a collaboration per se, but something we sort of dreamed up together. The Vinny is a 1 watt tube amp that sounds enormous. It sounds like a big amp, except it's just not that loud. But it has a instrument level output on it. And I found that my favorite thing to do with it was to drive a bigger amp, because you could get full power amp and full power transformer distortion at whatever volume level you wanted. You just adjusted the bigger amp.
Right.
And so Chris and I got to talking, and he was like, what if we put this all together in one unit? And so the Vincent is the Vinny and a slightly modified version of his 30 watt Chimera in the same unit. So when you engage the quote unquote dirt channel, what you're actually doing is putting an entire another amplifier into your signal. So it's insane. I'm a pretty big fan, but it also
sounds cool. I gotta try that.
Yeah, you have to come by the Shred Shed one of these days. You can nerd out for hours.
I'd love to. I'm a huge Vox fan. I mean, I love the AC30 to death. But I've got my collection of other amps. I'm always looking for new sounds.
This is one of them. But it also
here's how we enable each other.
Yes,
we're enabling ourselves.
It has my kid's name on it though, so I'm obviously pretty.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah. When I see a bigger artist, there's a few out there using them. I'm like, they don't know that. They don't know who I am. But it's cool that my kid's name is up there.
That's super cool, man.
But
wow.
Yeah, this is why this industry's cool. That's why we do these things.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
Oh, man. Yeah, I can imagine seeing seeing your amp there up on stage again, that's my friend's John Mayer, somebody like that playing your amp, it's got to make you feel good, man. That's really cool.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't. Yeah, it's hard. I'll stop talking about it now. I've talked about it. The listeners of this podcast are tired of me talking about Benson amps, I think, so I should stop. I've been trying to be not so much of a shill, but I failed this time. So
now, if you love it, you love it, man.
So what does your rig look like most of the time? Are you playing out much these days, or when you're playing by yourself, what kind of gear are you using? Obviously, you said the AC30s.
Yeah, I've been using AC30s for years, and actually my favorite rig is an AC30 on top of a Vox 2x12 extension cab. I used that for a long time, but just recently, well, I say recently, it's been like 10 years. I got into orange stuff again. Ooh. And I got a TV50H that I run to a 2x12 Vox or a 4x12 Vox with greenbacks, and I love that thing. So it's weird. I feel like I'm cheating on the Vox when I play the orange, but they're both British, right? They're
yeah, it's fine.
Maybe I'm dating sisters or something like that. They just don't need to find out about each other.
Yeah, it's okay. They're sister wives, so they're fine with it.
That's a Utah thing.
I didn't even put that together, but I'm gonna go with it. Yeah, it's a Utah thing. It's totally fine.
But yeah, so when I voice stuff, my pedals, I end up playing through a ton of different amps, all the way from a little 1 watt all the way up to JCM 800s and things. But my go-tos, if I can, the way I figured is the Vox AC30 makes everything sound good. The orange is actually a little bit more finicky. If I can make it sound good on the orange, it's going to sound good on most everything. But those are my two go-tos. I don't have a whole lot of other pedals, to tell you the truth. Well, it's funny because I have like 5 pedals. There's a lot of guitar players in town who think I have this massive pedal board, and that's how you can tell if somebody's not on like the gear page or the TDPRI or something like that. If they see 5 pedal boards and think you have a big pedal board, you're like, no, dude, you don't even know. There's guys out there with 30 freaking pedals on their board.
Yeah, 5 pedals. That's cute, right? It's cute.
Yeah, exactly. That's manageable. Yeah. But yeah, so I normally have a Morley Maverick Wah. I use my trusty hardwire tuner. I have a black spiral. I've got an HBE Silicide phaser, rubberneck, and sometimes I'll throw on a couple different delays. Oh, in fact, I just got turned on to the Demodash T120, and that's been kind of going on and off my board. But yeah, I usually have a couple of delays, but that's pretty much it. Then into my orange or into my Vox, and that's my thing.
What about the guitars?
My favorite is right now are SGs, and that's been my favorite for a while. I played a Gretsch almost exclusively for over a decade. I have a Silver Jet that I just love to death. But I took that on the road, so it's kind of getting beat up. I should probably track down another one, but yeah, SGs or Gretches are I love them. I've got other guitars, but those are my main ones.
Gotcha.
In fact, I got a, everybody talks crap about limited edition things or artist, signature guitars and stuff like that. But some of those can be cool. Guitar Center had, I'm not sure I think it was 2013 and 2014. They had, no, maybe it was earlier than that. Anyway, they had a special run of SGs made just for Guitar Centers that had coil taps. And I bought a white one there that I just absolutely fell in love with. I just love it to death. It sounds great. Having those extra tones available is super cool. And then I later found a Silverburst one from the exact same year, exact same run. And I got that one too. So I've got 2 SGs with the coil taps that just slay. And so those are my main babies.
There's something about a white SG to me. Like That's my favorite color on an SG is a white SG. And then I like to take it even further. I think my favorite SG of all time is the triple pickup with their vibrato on it.
Oh yeah,
call that the
for
layer?
sure.
Layer? I forgot how they say that word. I think that's what they
Yeah, yeah. I know which one you're talking about. Not the sideways one. The their normal one, or
Yeah.
you're talking about the sideways one, because they have that really weird sideways one that you push up and down instead of like a normal vibrato.
No, it's a normal. It's like the Sister Rosetta Tharp guitar.
Yeah,
That's the one. That's what I picture. I'm like, that is the ultimate SG for me. I know most people think Angus Young, but I like flashy guitars sometimes. I don't know why.
yeah. So for me, it's Pete Townshend. Granted, he played a white junior, SG junior, but when I saw him or saw photos of him when I was a kid playing that white SG, I'm just like, that is a rock and roll guitar.
It is.
So that's what I think of. It's kind of a mod thing too. I mean, a white SG is like about the most mod thing I can think of. Besides, a tall haircut and a parka.
Yeah, you're probably right about that. Which I've never really considered myself much into that in that vein, but I don't know. I definitely have some guitars that are very very mod. So maybe I am. Maybe I'm secretly one.
A closet mod.
A closet mod. I didn't know. I thought I was a punk, but it turns out I like too many flashy guitars to be a punk. I don't know.
Yeah. Next we both need to get a Vespa scooter.
I kind of want one. I'm not gonna lie. I just don't need all those mirrors.
You're a closet mod, man.
I don't need all those mirrors though. That's just dumb. That's just silly.
Well, so all the mirrors are for when you have your piled up haircut and you have to be able to look at yourself as you're driving. So
see, yeah. Well, I tend to have my hair cut off, so
me too.
Just much more comfortable that way.
That's where we fail as mods. Our closet mod dream will never be realized because we have crappy haircuts.
It's very. That is actually the truth behind my buzz cut. Is I spent most of my life not knowing how to style my hair, and I was finally like, you know what, this isn't worth it. Cut it all off. Just cut it off.
I'm just going to accept this.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what to do with this. I got cowlicks. I can't make a hairstyle that looks good. I'm just gonna go for the G.I. Jane look and call it a day.
Utilitarian.
Yep. All right. Well, we're getting into the last few minutes of the podcast here. I'd like to ask you to plug anything you want to plug. Say anything you want to say. This is your chance to put a billboard up for everybody.
Oh, wow. Say anything I want to say, even politics?
If you want.
No, I'm just kidding. I'm not going to
comment on it. I will not comment on it, but you can say whatever you want.
Not a chance. I'm totally joking. Let's see. Definitely come check out my website and see what I have to offer. It really truly is a labor of love. I hand make everything. I feel like I'm doing some not just unique looks, but also some unique tones. Let's see, what else would I like to talk about? I guess what I would like to really touch on is that people tend to get jaded in this industry, and we talked about some of the cool things that this industry has to offer, and I think that I would try to steer people away from worrying about anything that has to do with industry and the marketing part of it, and concentrate more on the creative aspects of it, because that's really what drives us. And I think we mentioned that a little bit earlier. The driving force for a lot of us is the creative aspect, and once you start trying to fight that urge to be cynical, it kind of opens you up more toward some of the more positive things that happen in our industry. And there's a lot of them, man. I mean, our industry is freaking cool.
It really is.
What we do is cool.
It's the best. It's my favorite. I mean, I fought tooth and nail to try to get into it. So for whatever that tells people, I didn't know how. I just was like, I want to be a part of this. Let me in. Yep. Let me in.
And the reason I mention that is because, with my history, people kind of get hung up on some of the more negative aspects of what happened. But I got to say, man, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Honestly, Samsung buying Harman and then Harman scuttling Digitech and DOD, as awful as that was, for me, it turned out great. I mean, it's a sad thing for the House of Whammy. But for me and Spiral, it set me on my current path. So, I want concentrate on the positive, man.
Of course. I think that's an important message for everyone, regardless of what we're talking about. Concentrate on the positive, because there's a lot of it, and it's easier to focus on the negative. But in reality, there's a lot more positivity out there. So focus on that.
I think so. How's that for a nice positive ending right there?
I like that.
Uplifting.
But we could go negative here depending on how these next questions go. So let's see how. We've got a couple more. So now that you're not with DOD or Digitech anymore, you can actually answer this question. What is your favorite Boss pedal?
Oh, man. Dude, well, I mean, fuzz. I'm a fuzz nerd. So it's going to be the FZ2 and the FZ3.
There you go.
Those are my absolute favorite. Well, no, okay. So FZ2, FZ3, and the CE1. Ooh. Oh, well, hold on. FZ2, FZ3, CE1, and remember the old BG? This is a really obscure fuzz, but back in the day when they were just barely shifting from Roland to Boss, or just starting Boss, I'm not sure how that whole thing worked. They had the B-Ba and they had the BG, and the BG fuzz kicks butt. That is an awesome fuzz.
I don't know anything about that. I will have to do some Googling later. I've never heard of the BG.
It's the balls. That is a great fuzz.
Oh, man. I got to check that out. This question is, I anticipated most people to really have to think on that question a little bit because there's so many Boss pedals, but most people are just like, I got it, and they just know. So it's kind of a fun one. So this is the last question. This is the classic question. This is the one where, people tend to get in a little bit of trouble. So we'll see how it goes.
Uh-oh.
What's your favorite kind of pizza?
Oh, dude. So I am totally in the camp that pineapple on pizza is the spawn of the devil and should be shunned at all costs. So I'll get that out of the way right off the bat.
Good man.
But when it comes to pizza, I'm a traditionalist, man. Pepperoni, plain old pepperoni pizza. When done right, that's where it's at.
It's hard to beat. You won't find very many people arguing with a slice of pepperoni pizza. It's not a.
It's even when it's done poorly, it's still pretty good.
How do you like
when it's done
crust?
Right? It's heavenly. I like cracker crust, but I also like thick crust too. So I'm kind of agnostic when it comes to that. I mean, I know that the New York style traditionalists, have their thing, but there's some cracker crusts that thin crust stuff that's really freaking good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't really understand the whole New York pizza thing until I went there. Then I was like, oh
yeah,
I got it now. I understand. Because honestly, I just looked at it. I'm like, yeah, it looks like pizza. Like how good can it be? I'm like, oh, it can be that good.
It can be really good.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to throw this right back at you. What are your thoughts? I'm going to get you in trouble. What are your thoughts on Chicago style?
So honestly, I think, well, there's an asterisk on this because I have never been to Chicago and experienced true Chicago pizza. I have had Chicago style pizza a handful of times, and based on that experience, I say that it's not really pizza. It's a pizza.
There you go.
It's a pizza partner. It's a pizza cousin. Kind of like a pizza roll isn't pizza, or like a calzone isn't pizza.
Yeah, there you go.
But
I'm right there with you.
It's pizza-esque. It's a different thing. It's its own thing, and you need to appreciate it for what it is. But don't think that it's going to scratch the same itch as a classic slice of pepperoni pizza. That's my opinion on it. As of now.
I completely agree with you. I concur. I ate deep dish Chicago style, and I'm like, this is lasagna, but it's really good.
It's good. Yeah, it's lasagna. There's another style of Chicago pizza that looks much more A, like pizza, and B, up my alley, and that's the tavern style. Have you seen the tavern style?
No. What is that?
It's more like traditional. It's a little bit. Now this is just visual because I haven't actually had it, but it looks like it's a little bit thicker, only slightly thicker than like a New York style slice. It looks very much like your local neighborhood pizza joint, but something about it looks better. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's more well done, if they like cook it hotter, But the examples that I've been shown of tavern style Chicago pizza look pretty delicious. So I'm gonna have to slide over there. Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick he's like a partner in a very tasty looking pizzeria in Chicago called Peace, and it looks incredible. I really want to try it someday when I can get there. Got to get there first.
I'll have to check that out too. I'm not in Chicago often, but when I am there, I try to hit some pizza joints and stuff like that. Oh, okay. So what are your thoughts on more exotic pizzas, like the gourmet pizzas with artichoke hearts and special sauces and all that kind of stuff?
I'm into it. I'm in Portland, so I feel like it's necessary for me to be into it. But it's not like my go-to. But like when I'm at a place like that and they've got something kind of wild, I'm like, yeah, let's go. I really like artichoke hearts, just kind of in general. But I won't go too crazy. Like I'm not too interested in like dessert pizzas. That doesn't really do anything for me. But like I'll get down on something with like a white sauce and some pesto or something like that. I can get into it. But it's not what I crave when I'm like I really want pizza. I crave like more classic stuff. But I really like Italian like wood-fired pizza. I'm a big fan of that style. We have a really good one locally. So there's some stipulations there.
Yeah, so there's a pizza joint in town that does some of that gourmet stuff, and there's one they have that this is going to sound gross, but it's so good. They have a chicken bacon ranch pizza. Like I said, it sounds gross. The ranch is what throws me.
It throws me too.
So freaking good.
I'm not a ranch fan,
freaking good.
But you say it works with the other flavors. Is that what you're getting at?
So it doesn't end up tasting like ranch. It tastes like a white sauce with a little more tang to it. So once you cook it, it doesn't taste like ranch anymore. Thank God. Yeah.
Good. We seem to have similar kind of vibes on this whole thing, so I like that.
I think so. We should get pizza together.
Oh, let's do it. We should do it at NAMM. Well, there's not very many good pizza places that I've found.
No, it's like trying to find It's like trying to find a good Mexican place in Louisiana or something. It's not going to happen.
Yeah, probably not.
But you're up in Portland, right?
Yes.
Because there's going to be a Deli Mag thing up there in March, I think, and I'm tentatively planning on going. So we should hook up.
Oh, I just found out about that like a week ago. I'm definitely going. So if you're going to be there, yeah. And this is kind of a secret, but Portland's got some legit pizza places. So
really?
Oh yeah. We can talk about that more here in a little bit, but let's put a bow on this. What do you say?
Sounds good.
All right. For Tom, this is Blake. And as always, folks, good luck and good tones. All right, we did it. There's another episode in the can, and I say this after every single episode, and I don't know what else to say, so I guess that's just what I'm going to keep saying, so I'm saying it now. Wow, I can repeat myself a lot. That is really impressive. No, it's not. You're an idiot. Anyway, if you want more of these conversations, there is more for you over on Patreon. So patreon.com/tonemob. There is more of this conversation with Mr. Tom Cram. We talked even more about his favorite bands, what he's into these days, what it's like experiencing music as you get a little bit older in age, and I can start to relate to that, which is a little bit weird. Anyway, that's what we talk about in the Patreon episode. So there's more episodes every week, extra audio content. Sometimes it's extra episodes with the guests. Sometimes it's me and my good friend Justin Porter talking about whatever kind of gear news is going on or whatever's happening in our lives. Sometimes it's me doing some more audio demos. It's extra audio content for you, and it starts at just $5 a month. It really, truly helps immensely. I can't even tell you. And plus, the Patreon people get to be privy to all the secret stuff. So that's always a good thing. All right, thanks so much for tuning in to this episode this week, and I will talk to you next week. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye-bye. One last thing before we totally sign off here. I just want to remind you that if you do any shopping at Stringjoy, that's Stringjoy guitar strings made in Nashville, that will help me out as well. As I've said for years, I'm heavily involved in that company, and I really do think they're making the best products on the market. So if you would like to try custom strings, go to tonemob.com/stringjoy and check them out today. I seriously love what the team down there is doing. I help them out with all kinds of things, and by you supporting them, you are also supporting me as well. And hey, you need some strings, so why not get some custom strings just for your guitar and playing style? Again, the link for that is tonemob.com/stringjoy, and that will take you right to their website, and you can do all your shopping through there, and that will help everyone involved out. So thank you very much. Talk to you next time. We are brought to you by the wonderful folks at Gun Street Wiring Shop. Yes, Gun Street Wiring Shop. I've talked about them before. I used to say based out of Bend, Oregon, but guess what? Sean moved to my neck of the woods. Sean's in Portland. Sean is awesome and has helped me with a bunch of stuff lately. And if you have wiring needs for your guitar, he can help you too. If you want to get weird with it, he can get weird. If you just need to spruce things up a little bit, there's your guy. He takes all the guesswork out of doing your guitar wiring, and he makes it simple, and his customer service is top-notch, and I can't say enough good things about Gun Street as a company. I really respect Sean and what he's all about, and the product is top-notch. I've got 3 different guitars that now have Gun Street harnesses in them, and I could not be happier. So go to gunstreetwiringshop.com and check them out.